Have you noticed how the system trembles when someone appears who wears no uniform, who doesn't kneel before diplomas or bow to paper thrones? Have you seen how society reacts with discomfort when someone stands up and says, "I learned on my own," without teachers, licenses, or permissions? It's because the autodidact is a shadow that fractures the false harmony of academic temples. He is the intruder who sneaks into the banquet of the accredited and exposes that the table was never as exclusive as it seemed. Power needs you to believe that your mind has no value until someone else validates it. They convince you that without credentials you are invisible, as if your curiosity weren't enough to break through walls and open doors. But here's the secret. Autodidacts make people uneasy because they think without chains, because they don't follow pre-drawn routes, because they allow themselves to get lost in order to find paths no one had seen before. Their mere existence is a crack in the structure of control, a silent fire threatening to spread. And that terrifies. Because while you're still wondering if you're worthy of learning, they've already built projects, written books, created companies, changed realities. While you wait for a teacher's permission, they've already taken the tools and are striking at the foundations of the established order. The autodidact is the heresy the system cannot tolerate, a free body in a city of voluntary slaves. What you're going to discover today isn't a poetic metaphor or a mild critique. You're going to see why the autodidact is persecuted, marginalized, labeled as weird, isolated, crazy, or rebellious. You'll understand the strategies used to neutralize them, and why that solitude, which seems like a curse, is actually their greatest strength. Stay until the end, because I'm going to show you how to stop begging for validation, how to escape the mirages of recognition and embrace the intellectual freedom that's always been inside you. I promise, by the time this video ends, you'll never look at your curiosity with fear again, because you'll have understood that learning without permission isn't a threat. It's your true power. The system teaches you to worship keys, but never the doors. It makes you believe a diploma is a magical key that opens worlds, when in reality, it's a piece of rusted metal that fits no real lock. Life doesn't open with titles. It opens with uncomfortable questions, with untamed curiosity, with the courage to look where no one else dares. That's why the autodidact becomes a dangerous specter. He walks through corridors others didn't know existed, breaks through walls others saw as limits, and proves that knowledge doesn't need gatekeepers to be reached. The autodidact doesn't study to pass, he studies to understand. He doesn't seek approval from a tribunal of evaluators. He seeks to wrest secrets from the world. And that difference changes everything. While others obsess over grades, he obsesses over ideas. While others wait for an exam to show what they know, he turns what he learns into projects, into action, into tangible creation. That makes the autodidact unpredictable. He doesn't play by the rules because his game is another. And when someone refuses to play by the established rules, power starts to tremble. Think about this. The temples of credentials are built on a single dogma, that only what they certify has value. But the autodidact is the living heresy that breaks that dogma. He shows that a man can learn programming locked in his room and end up building a company that competes with corporate giants. He becomes an artist without academies, a philosopher without a doctorate, a thinker without approved bibliography. Each of these examples is a dagger tearing apart the illusion that knowledge belongs only to the priests of the system. That's why they attack, not with swords, but with mockery, labels, and that invisible poison called public ridicule. They call them amateurs, improvisers, charlatans, because they lack the blessing of titles. That's the strategy. Marginalize them to make them seem less dangerous. Discredit them so their ideas appear as smoke. But what the system fears isn't the autodidact's ignorance. It's his freedom. Because an autodidact who dares to think without permission is harder to control than 1,000 graduates waiting for instructions. And here lies the most unsettling detail. The autodidact doesn't just learn differently, he thinks differently. While the rest move in straight lines drawn by official programs, he walks in zigzags, gets lost and finds himself, explores unexpected connections. That unpredictability is dynamite in a world obsessed with uniformity. He is the madman who sees patterns where others see chaos, the heretic who dares to say the emperor is naked. And when someone dares to see what others pretend not to, the entire theater of power begins to shake. What's fascinating is that the isolation so often used as an insult against autodidacts is, in fact, their best laboratory. Solitude isn't their punishment, it's their training ground. While others are distracted by social approval, the autodidact dives into a fertile silence where ideas grow without censorship. It's in that solitude that thoughts are forged, thoughts that will later set entire societies on fire. The autodidact is the invisible architect working in the shadows, and when he emerges into the light, he's already built a mental empire no one saw coming. Now ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped waiting for validation? What if you embraced that solitude you fear so much? What if you turned it into your battlefield? What the system calls isolation is, in truth, independence. What they paint as failure is your greatest advantage. And here's the paradox. The more independent you are, the more they'll try to silence you. Because every step you take is a brutal reminder that their chains are optional. Stay. Because what comes next is even more uncomfortable. I'll show you how the system not only marginalizes autodidacts, but also tries to erase their footprints from history, and how, despite that, they always return as ghosts that cannot be buried. Understanding this may change the way you see your own capacity to learn and challenge what's established. Have you noticed how official history always tries to hide those who learned on their own? Look at the books you read in school, the documentaries repeating the same names again and again. All glorify those legitimized by institutions, while silencing those who trained in solitude, as if genius needed permission to exist. But look closer, and you'll see a disturbing pattern. Behind every revolution, every radical advance, there's always an autodidact in the margins, someone who refused to accept that knowledge must bear an official seal. The powerful know this. That's why they work so hard to shape collective memory. Because if the masses discovered that great changes were born from people who never waited for validation, the myth of dependency collapses. Imagine the risk. If every young person understood they could learn to code without university, create music without conservatory, philosophize without a chair, what would happen to the structures that govern the value of knowledge today? Exactly. They'd crumble like temples of sand. And here's where something more sinister appears. Narrative control. The system doesn't just marginalize autodidacts in the present. It rewrites the past so you believe they never existed. When one of them shines so brightly he can't be ignored, they reconfigure him, presenting him as a product of the institutions. That's how they domesticated the memory of inventors, writers, and thinkers who were self-taught but absorbed into official history as if they'd been children of the system. It's a hijacking of biographies, a theft of truth. What they can't erase, though, is the essence of the autodidact, his intellectual rebellion. That ability to learn from discomfort, from scarcity, from lack, That's his magic. Because while others need funded labs, vast libraries, or certified tutors, the autodidact turns any corner into a classroom, any failure into a teacher, any mistake into a tool. That adaptability is pure dynamite against a world that wants uniform, obedient, domesticated citizens. The system, of course, knows how to defend itself. It discredits. It doesn't need to silence through violence. A poisonous whisper is enough. He's not serious, he has no degree, he's an amateur. That's the most effective weapon. It doesn't kill the autodidact, but infects how others see him. And that collective distrust becomes an invisible wall stronger than any prison. But what they don't understand is that the autodidact doesn't seek external approval. He seeks real impact. He can live with mockery because he knows his recognition won't come today. It'll come tomorrow when the world finally needs what he was already building in solitude. Here's what's most intriguing. Autodidacts aren't just intellectual threats, they're psychological ones. Because when one of them succeeds, he exposes everyone else. He proves the official path wasn't necessary, that years of obedient sacrifice were partly an illusion. It's as if a prisoner broke his chains and escaped in front of those still crawling with shackles. That image destroys the narrative that the prison was inevitable. And that's exactly what the system can't tolerate. The living proof that the chains were always open. That's why the triumph of the autodidact isn't celebrated. It's hidden. It's minimized, dismissed, attributed to luck or innate talent, but never to the discipline of having learned alone. Because to recognize it would be to admit that all those years of submission, all those rituals of obedience and external validations weren't necessary. And no one who's spent half a lifetime kneeling before paper idols can bear that truth. The success of an autodidact is a cruel mirror reflecting an unbearable image, that of others' cowardice. That's why the voices of contempt rise. They don't say, "Your freedom hurts me." They say, "That's not serious. It's not the same. You lack backing." It's a collective defense mechanism. Because if they admit you achieved what they never dared to attempt, then their identity, built on obedience, collapses like a house of cards. And here's the truly Machiavellian part. The system doesn't even need to order people to attack the autodidact. The obedient ones do it themselves. They become voluntary guardians of the established order. It's the herd mentality disguised as prudence. See how it works. As soon as someone begins to stand out without credentials, the bonfire of criticism is lit around them. Not because what they do is wrong, but because their existence makes others uncomfortable, those who prefer to live on their knees. It's the slave who insults the one who escapes, not out of hatred, but out of fear of realizing he too could have fled. That collective psychology is the system's most powerful weapon. It doesn't need iron prisons when it has mental ones built with the complicity of millions. Here lies the paradox. The autodidact endures loneliness not because he lacks support, but because his freedom wounds too deeply. His isolation isn't caused by lack of contact, but by the rejection he provokes. The autodidact becomes a living reminder of what others could have been, but weren't. And that's why the group expels him. It's the price of independence, to unsettle others with your mere existence. And what most see as punishment becomes the autodidact's greatest advantage, because in that distance, he strengthens, trains, sharpens his mind away from the noise. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. History is full of examples, though few dare to name them. Think of the tech visionaries who never finished college, the artists who never entered an academy, the thinkers ridiculed in life. They were first condemned to obscurity, labeled as heretics, and later glorified when they could no longer defend themselves. The system always acts the same. First, it buries you in contempt, and if it can't extinguish you, it tries to claim you after death. But in that process, the truth is revealed. You never needed them. And this is what hurts the most. When an autodidact proves through action that the prison was an illusion, centuries of dogma collapse with a single gesture. Because there's no argument more powerful than living evidence. It doesn't matter how many speeches the system repeats, how many titles the temple's guardians display, before a free creator, before someone who rose from nothing and built something real. All those credentials become soggy cardboard masks under the rain. So I want you to understand this. Your curiosity is dangerous. Not because it leads to mistakes, but because it takes you to a place where you no longer depend on anyone. And the system can't stand not being needed. It can't stand your self-sufficiency. The true threat isn't that you might discover something new. It's that you might discover you can do it alone. Because a mind that no longer needs chains becomes an ungovernable mind. Stay with me, because we haven't reached the darkest part yet. How power, aware of this threat, has designed an entire architecture of distractions and artificial rewards to keep you tied, so that even when you think you're free, you remain a prisoner who never dares to use the key in his pocket. And when you understand that machinery, when you see how its pieces fit together, you'll realize why the autodidact is the most feared enemy of all. The system doesn't fear your mistakes. It fears your awakening. That's why it fills your life with noise, with screens that distract you, with notifications that drag you into digital obedience. They offer you instant rewards, virtual applause, hollow badges, anything to keep you from looking inward. Because if one day you turn off the noise and listen to your own mind, you'll realize you don't need their permission to create. You don't need their title to think. You don't need their chains to move forward. And that day, they lose. The autodidact is a virus in the system because he proves that independence is possible. Every time someone stands up and says, "I learned it on my own," the official narrative is struck by lightning. That lightning terrifies, but it also illuminates. And today I want you to understand that you can be that lightning. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need to beg for credentials. Your curiosity is enough. Your hunger for knowledge is enough. Your mental freedom is enough. The conclusion is clear. Learning without permission is the most revolutionary act you can commit in a world that lives off external validation. Your mind is yours, not the institutions. Your ideas are yours, not the tribunals. Your path is yours, not the guardians of the temples. And when you decide to walk it, when you dare to think independently, you become what they fear most: an ungovernable, unpredictable, and free individual. So here's my invitation. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring this hidden side of reality, if you want to walk with me through the walls of this system that pretends to be invincible. And write in the comments a phrase that will be our secret pact. I think without permission. That will be the sign that you understood the message, that you're no longer willing to live in chains. I'll say goodbye, but not like everyone else. Not with a farewell, but with a warning. From today on, every time someone tries to convince you that without credentials you're worthless, remember this truth and smile. Because they're still trapped in a theater of shadows, while you already know where the light is. See you in the next video. If the system doesn't manage to silence you first,